So there's 2 days left on Trump's tariff clock, and here's where we sit. Canada is standing strong, Americans are fleeing their own country, and our Loonie just hit a 2-month high as the US dollar dropped to a 2-month low on the exact same morning.
Well, if that's what America winning looks like, then by all means, Donald, don't let Canada interrupt you. The Trump administration is desperate right now. They thought they could break Canada. They thought they could break Mexico. But all they've done is break the confidence in their own country. The Loonie closed above 72 cents on Friday, and the greenback sitting at its weakest level in 10 weeks because traders have basically stopped believing the Fed's coming to bail them out in September.
And it's not just currency traders voting with their wallets. Foreign direct investment into Canada has been sitting around $96.8 billion this year, and the TSX has been setting records while Wall Street chops sideways on tariff headlines.
So, global capital is looking at two countries mid-standoff and quietly choosing a side. And it's not the one issuing the threats. When money moves like that during a hostage negotiation, you're not looking at the hostage anymore.
So, picture the negotiating table on Wednesday night. On one side, you've got Prime Minister Carney, calm, currency climbing. On the other side, you've got a bloated diaper-wearing con man whose own money is quietly packing a bag and heading for the door. And he's still trying to lecture Canada about who's desperate here.
Did you see all those pictures of his ass? I'm telling you, I don't know what's under that coat, but it sure doesn't look like a president.
I don't even really want to know, truthfully.
Now, all of that would have been bad enough, but you know what? It's not just the money leaving. The backlog for proof of Canadian citizenship just blew past 121,800 applications, more than double the 56,000 sitting there in April. And guess what? A huge chunk of that surge is Americans.
Well, it turns out that I guess the hottest investment in the US right now isn't gold or Bitcoin. It's a Canadian passport application sitting in a filing cabinet just in case Wednesday gets weird. Nothing says we believe in you, Mr. President, like your own citizens quietly applying for an exit door.
And that's what Trump and his Washington cronies keep refusing to admit. Their entire strategy depends on Canada believing that it has no options. The second people start collecting a second passport just as insurance, well, his story falls completely apart.
Which brings us back to Wednesday midnight, 12:01 a.m. Section 338 kicks in and slaps 50% tariffs on $28 billion worth of Canadian goods. Electronics, textiles, dairy, alcohol, lumber, all of it. And they had to use a century-old law to make it happen. They went digging for the rustiest hammer in the shed because the modern ones require actual congressional cooperation. And, we all know this White House, they don't believe in going through Congress for anything.
No, and Trump seems to like the old stuff, like just look at the steam he wants to use on ships. And he's so afraid of magnets. We're not quite sure why. Now, all of this tells you something useful. When your best weapon is one nobody's field-tested in living memory, you're not negotiating for strength. You're negotiating from improvisation.
Now, the real fight underneath all of this is for autos and lumber. And apparently, Washington's floating dropping the auto tariff down to around 15%. Like, that's actually generous. Canada looked at that and said, nice try, bud. You want your alcohol back on the shelves? You're going to have to do better than that.
And lumber, it's uglier, honestly. Because Canada's been fighting this exact battle with Washington since before some of our viewers were born. The U.S. won't touch the Section 232 lumber tariffs. They just want Canada to sit tight for a review that might, maybe, someday lower a different tariff.
Might isn't a trade policy, it's a horoscope. That's why BC is telling Ottawa flat out, American booze does not go back on Canadian shelves until lumber actually moves. And Ontario is saying the same thing about autos. You don't hand back our only leverage before the other guy hasn't even paid for it.
And there's another thing about this deadline that I think Trump completely miscalculated. Deadlines only work if the person across the table is more afraid of the clock than you are. Canada has known August 19th was coming for weeks. Businesses have been preparing, provinces have retaliation lists, And Ottawa has already said it's willing to let the tariffs land rather than sign something it considers worth.
So every day that Canada doesn't blink, the threat loses a little bit more of its theater. Monday becomes Tuesday, Tuesday becomes Wednesday, and eventually Trump has to decide whether he actually pulls the trigger. Threatening 50% tariffs, well, sure, that sounds powerful, but actually imposing them means that US importers start getting invoices with 50% added to them. That's the reality staring US consumers right in the face.
Yeah, Canadian companies are facing that uncertainty as well, but so are American companies. So if you buy Canadian equipment, furniture, clothing, or food products, you now have to decide whether your supplier costs 50% more on Wednesday morning. Trump created that uncertainty himself, and businesses hate uncertainty almost as much as Donald Trump hates a fact checker.
Which is why I keep coming back to the Loonie. Not because 72 cents suddenly makes Canada an economic superpower, but currencies are sensitive to fear. And heading into the biggest tariff threat of this negotiation, we're not watching the Canadian dollar collapse.
Then put that beside the citizenship story, and Americans are literally fleeing north because they see the dumpster fire blazing in their own backyard. What they're doing here is they're buying themselves options. And there's something deeply ironic about that happening while the president is spending his summer insisting that Canadians secretly want to become Americans. Lies, lies, and more lies. Now, it turns out American citizens are getting smart, and they're actually investigating that claim. And you know what? It's actually the other way around. The mega playbook again. Every accusation is a confession.
And here is where this genuinely gets rich to me. The entire negotiation is built on Trump dangling a signature like it's some kind of prize. Sign this or else. Except we already know exactly what one of his signatures is worth. Absolutely nothing.
Just like his FIFA prize. So if Canada signs anything new this week, Washington is basically asking Canada to trust a guy whose signature has the shelf life of a supermarket sushi roll. It looks fine one day, but you wouldn't want to test it a week later.
And if you thought this was all just a Canadian problem, well, think again. This weekend, he gutted a chunk of military exercises with South Korea, a formal alliance almost 80 years old, hours before they were just set to start. Why? Well, because Kim Jong-un of North Korea is back in favor this week, and Seoul wouldn't help him squeeze Iran.
He actually said because of my special relationship with Kim Jong-un. Now we know where this dude stands. An 8-decade treaty ally got downgraded to a mood swing, or someone trying to make friends with a dictator. If an alliance is that old as disposable, well, what do you think a tariff exemption signed next Wednesday is worth? Well, it's going to be worth absolutely nothing, which is what Trump keeps proving.
Carney's not being stubborn holding the line this week. He sees the writing on the wall. A bad deal signed today to dodge Wednesday's headache doesn't save Canada in 2031 if the auto formula is already bleeding Canada jobs out the back door.
Okay, now here's the thing. Dave and I, we're not quite sure how this is going to play out, and we have actually differing opinions. So we want to put it out to you what you think. Dave, he thinks that Washington case before midnight.
I do. Trump needs a win before the midterms start dominating those headlines. And the "I crushed Canada" only works as a headline if Canada's actually crushed. And right now, the currency chart says the exact opposite. I think he folds on the deadline and calls it a strategic pause. Taco Trump strikes again.
Now, I'm not so sure, because Trump, he's shown that he couldn't care less about the economic pain. He just doesn't want to look like he's ever backed down. So my money's on the deadline hitting and some damage landing, but the deal getting patched up quietly later after Trump has dangled shiny balls to let everyone forget what's been happening.
Which is fair, but we'll let you guys settle it. Does a deal land before midnight Wednesday? Does Trump quietly push the deadline back again like he's done before in Taco? Or do the tariffs actually hit and Canada retaliates hard?
Ooh, I can't wait to read this one. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, check out that pinned comment. Because you know what? Hoekstra's petition is well over 200,000 signatures so far, so we got to get some more people to give him the boot. All the links to that, our Substack, the A-Team, the merch store, and our Facebook group are all in the pinned comment.
And don't forget to give this a like, a hype, and a share so other people can weigh in on this tariff fight as well.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.